But, Mr. President, why I really rise while we're working on clearing these amendments is to stand up for my constituents, to stand up for a family in Baltimore that has been vilified by the right-wing bloggers because they dared to say that they benefited from and support a public program called the Children's Health Initiative. Mr. President, I really don't know what's happening in America here now, where instead of working to change policies, the right wing tries to change the subject, and they do it by attacking people rather than attacking the problem, like the problem of poverty, the problem that our children don't have health care, the problem that one of my constituents, a little boy named Amonte, died in Prince George's County because he didn't have access to dental care and had a severe oral bacterial infection. My colleague, Senator Cardin, has taken up the cudgels on that issue, and I support him. It's in our Children's Health Initiative, in which I hope we would override the veto. But let me tell you what happened. I'm taking up for a family named Bonnie and Halsey Frost, who live in Baltimore. And a few weeks ago, they stood here in the Congress to say that they benefited from the SCHIP program. They told this story about how 2 of their children had been in a horrific accident. Graham, who was the boy that gave the Democratic radio address, spoke about what he needed. He had a brain injury. He was treated at Hopkins. So did his little sister. Graham was in a coma for weeks. One of his vocal cords was paralyzed. One of his eyes continues to be damaged. Jenna, his little sister, has suffered permanent injuries, which I won't go through. The families had their business spread all over the right-wing blogs. I'm not going to spread it all over the Senate floor. But I want to take up for them. I want to take up for the fact that when they stood up to talk about how they benefited from this program, they were attacked because they weren't seemed worthy. The Frost have 4 children: Graham, who's 12, Max, who's Graham's twin, who was not, and who saw the accident, Gemma, who also was in the accident, and an older brother named Zeke. Bonnie and her children were in a car crash in 2004 when the SUV she was driving had an accident. The children had these terrible problems. Now, who are the Frost family? Well, the Frost family are a family of 6. They live in Baltimore, and they qualify under the Maryland SCHIP program, which says that if you have a family this size and an income of under $51,000 a year, you qualify. They qualified. So what happened? Through other friends of theirs who were involved with health advocacy in the state, they were invited to come and tell their story to show why there is a compelling need for the Children's Health Initiative. Well, they did it. And then guess what happened? After young Graham, who along with his sister, as I said, had this terrible thing happen to them, after they then spoke up and Graham gave the Democratic radio address, what followed was just unbelievable. It was a firestorm against them that went across the right-wing bloggers. Vitriolic, volcanic, ugly, nasty, shredding their name, shredding their reputation. You ought to talk to them about what they went through. They couldn't believe they were in the United States of America. They thought, hello, under the Constitution, freedom of speech. One of the right-wingers showed up where he has, around the area where he has his business, to do on-the-spot investigative reporting. Huh. I wish we were as good as keeping our borders safe as we are keeping, the boundaries around SCHIP. I wish we were as good as keeping an eye on terrorists, but no. They had to go after the Frost family. Paul Krugman felt so outraged about it, he wrote a column about it in the New York Times. He calls it a teaching moment on politics and health care. He tells the story about this, and then he said what followed had happened to this family should be a teaching moment. I'm going to read from this, and then I'm going to ask unanimous consent that his article be included in the paper. First, the Frost are the kind, and their 4 children are the kind of people who SCHIP was intended to help. Working Americans who can't afford health insurance. The parents have a combined income of over $50,000. What they then do, what they have is that the father is a self-employed woodworker and welder. They bought a house in East Baltimore in a neighborhood that's gone gentry. It's called Butcher's Hill. But when they bought it, yes, it was called Butcher's Hill from years and years and years ago when there were slaughterhouses killing cows and beef, making sausage for the ethnic communities. But it took on another name about the time they bought it. It was like a frontier town, riddled with drugs, all kinds of problems. But they believed in Baltimore, they believed in their country, and they were willing to be urban pioneers. So they bought this home for a modest price. Now we've been reclaiming Baltimore. Yes, the houses are selling at very high prices, but that's not what they paid for it. Now this man's self-employed. When he married, yes, they're from a prominent family. Their wedding announcement was in the New York Times. Since when? Does that mean anything? Then he has a small warehouse that provides a modest rental income. His wife works part-time at a medical publishing firm. They don't have health benefits. So, to go on with what Krugman said, soon after the radio address, right-wing bloggers kept insisting that there's something wrong with the Frost. They have a house in the neighborhood that they said is now expensive. But I can tell you when they bought it, it was truly Butcher's Hill. They have 2 of these children that are in private school, all on scholarships. No one bothered to find that. Right-wing bloggers made unfounded accusations against them all of the time. It was led by a woman who, according to the technocrats, has the most trafficked right-wing blog on the internet. Now, this tone of vitriolic viciousness, I think, has got to stop. The attack on the Graham family was quickly picked up by Rush Limbaugh, the same guy who's calling dissident military people microphone Marines. And the GOP, and then the smear went on with them. At the same time this was going on, a CNN report suggested that the Democrats made a tactical error because we had this family on. I don't know what we're doing here. Again, we're attacking a family when we should be attacking the problems of children's health. First of all, I've called the Frost family. I've listened to what they've had to endure, both what they had to endure because they didn't have health insurance after what's happened to their children after this terrible accident, and fortunately they're all in the recovery. Then I listened to what they had to endure because they spoke up for a children's health initiative. And when I listened to them, they said, I said to them that I think the Senate owed them an apology. That we now have come to this point that in behalf of this tone. Now, I've watched good people be attacked by right wing. And the other day, we sanctioned Move On because of what they did to General Petraeus. I voted for that sanction. But what about my Frost family? What about my Frost family? Should we have a sense of the Senate on that? I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to put this family more to it. But I will tell you this, Mr. President. I think we have to start changing the tone. We have to start changing the tone not only in our institution, to work on a bipartisan basis, the way the senator from Alabama and I have. We're moving forward a solid bill that promotes scientific research, keeps America's space program going, but even equally, we're funding local law enforcement. Can't we change the tone? Do we always have to attack each other? Do we always have to be so tart, so violent in our language, so vicious, so vitriolic? I don't think so. I think our country has to get back to basics, where you can disagree without being disagreeable, that you focus on the policy, not on the person, that you try to deal with issues. You don't attack people who, for the simple reason that they've spoken up and they've spoken out. Mr. President, I just think we need to take a time out in this country. You know, I respect free speech. I respect the bloggers and what they have. But I think when there is a deliberate attempt from either the right or the left to go after people simply because they've spoken up, I think it's the wrong direction. I think we have been heading in the wrong direction. So I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention what happened to this family. I ask unanimous consent that the Krugman article go in and that the David Hirshhorn record go into the record to account what's happened. They speak about it more eloquently than I've been able to describe. But I tell you, I feel bad about what happened to them, and I hope we can get back and focus now on dealing with the Children's Health Initiative and start protecting all of the children while I try to stand up here for the Frost family. Mr. President, I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Mr.